Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and an Italian battleship replay, although something a bit older than the brand new Italian battleships, but you know, it kind of serves as a reminder that this exists. This is of course the Roma, and you might be thinking, silly Jedi, that doesn't say Roma, but of course if you were around when this was released, you'll know that it was a copy-paste of the Roma to such an extent that if you took off the AL camo, it actually said Roma on the model underneath. And checking it before making this recording, I discovered that they have gone and edited the model to the extent that it no longer says Roma on the nameplate, but it now doesn't say anything at all on the nameplate. So they put in just enough effort to erase their shame, as it were, but then didn't bother doing the extra little bit of effort to write Littorio on the nameplate instead. So I think that still counts as being quite lazy. I mean, the whole thing was just counted as being one of the lazier copy-pastes anyway, but at least with the other ships we've had in-game, the Black Friday versions were kind of explicitly meant as copy-pastes, whereas this was meant to be, you know, a sister ship of Roma, and instead ended up just, like I say, being a complete copy-paste to the extent of still having the damn name on. Now, the Roma does serve as an archetype for the Italian battleships that are in the semi-public phase at the moment, with of course Wargaming now having moved to this model of let's monetize our tech tree ships by selling loot boxes, which seems to very firmly be a feature of the game now. But yeah, what they took from Roma is basically the wonky dispersion, the reasonably short range, yes, hello Sam, and also, more positively, the turret traverse. The turret traverse on these ships is very, very good indeed, and most of the line are fairly sneaky as well, not to the extent of British battleships, but certainly they are pretty decent in that regard. I think the thing most people will notice most immediately though is the dispersion, especially in the higher tiers. The dispersion is not good with the sigma numbers they have compared to their brethren. Most of them are like what, 1.5, 1.6 sigma, and I think the only other higher tier battleship that has sigma that's that bad is Alsace, I think I'm right in saying, and that happened as a result of progressive nerfs to Alsace because it was extremely powerful for quite a while. Still a good ship, but it's just not quite the beast it once was. Anyway, as for this match in particular, enough about battleships, Italian battleships generally. I think I kind of goofed by coming up here initially. I exposed myself to a very nasty hit from the side, which was what, nearly, it was over 14k, I don't know if it was quite 15k, but it was a big old chunk of hit points that I did not need to lose. And really, given the matchmaking, which is top tier, I could have just bow tanked at maybe around where that Cleveland is now. Around one of those islands anyway. I mean, especially now that the destroyers are out of the way. Even if I hadn't counted on the destroyers, that enemy destroyer getting knocked out, although sadly we lost our destroyer that was in the cap as well, I could have parked myself next to an island such that I could have backed around and been safe from torpedoes, potentially. So coming up here was a move that unnecessarily exposed me, and I have paid for that already. So yeah, that was not a thing you should probably do, is rush up, because you can get people doing the same on the other side, and that's what cost me rather badly. So in fact, 2 battleships up there. This cap is looking not super contested overall though. I mean, the Queen Elizabeth and Tirpitz have pushed aggressively up the 10 line, but it looks like they don't really have any other ships that are particularly trying to push this cap, and indeed the Andrea Doria is actively running away. And the Amalfi and the Geda are definitely nowhere close either. I mean, we know already the Geda torpedoed our, what was it, Matsuki? No, wait, Matsuki's tier 5, isn't it? Fubuki, possibly, because there's 2 tier 6 Japanese destroyers, so one of those tier 6 Japanese destroyers. Yeah, I know my warships. I mean, to be fair, there are quite a lot of them in the game at this point, and we have hit the stage where I think Wargaming is struggling to come up with ideas to make lines more unique, and we're starting to get some more far out things, such as German 15 centimeter guns, 15 centimeter guns, 150 millimeter guns, so basically, you know, cruiser sized armaments on destroyers, and said destroyers also having no smoke kind of thing, or speed boosts, which is definitely idiosyncratic, we'll put it that way. But, you know, we'll come to them in due course. They're all being tested at the moment. So this Tirpitz pushed round the Cleveland at that corner. I don't know what they were thinking. It's not like they had torpedoes or something like that to engage the Tirpitz with. They had basically no hope of coming out of that situation alive, and so they got sunk. That was our top tier radar cruiser that just went down for really no reason to the Tirpitz, and so that's not great. But the Tirpitz themselves has now completely overextended, and I took a bit of a chance giving them a broadside to potentially shoot at, just so I wouldn't be torpedoed, because there was a possibility of showing a broadside hurting, whereas eating 4 Tirpitz torps would have been incredibly nasty, to the point of maybe even being fatal. I did end up then giving a bit of broadside to this Queen Elizabeth as well, although that wasn't quite so bad in terms of the potential, but I think they actually did more damage to me than the Tirpitz did. And now they're trying to squirrel away behind the island, but I do get a couple of shots in as they are doing so. Nothing too fantastic though, I have to say, but I am up to almost 70k damage already, which is not bad for these guns. I mean, they're not particularly reliable in that not only do you have that dispersion to deal with, but they have a lot of penetration, these AP shells, and so you end up, especially against broadside targets, with a lot more overpens than you would want, and really it's angled targets that you want to go for with this ship. Yes, hello Sam. Yes, I know, you're starving to death. He's seen that I'm, you know, busy doing something at the computer, and so this is obviously the perfect time to come and interrupt me and just generally make a nuisance of himself. Ah, that's my foot. Samuel, ow. There we go. Unexpected feline acupuncture of the feet. That's what we want while I'm recording. Yes. Thank you very much, cat. Appreciate it. Anyway, I don't like script these things or anything, I swear. He's just that kind of cat. So there was a bit of dithering here as to whether I should go deal with the Queen Elizabeth, but clearly the Massachusetts is, and it looks like the Mainz is turning that way as well. And so, although I do turn away from the mid-cap here, I mean that's my intent now, is to push that mid-cap, it's purely because the Shinonome has popped up, and I'm now just trying to throw them off in terms of potentially dropping torpedoes against me. They've smoked up themselves, so I've temporarily lost sight, but now I've just opened fire, so they're going to know exactly where I am again. I'm just hoping they won't want to drop torps on a target that's moving away from them. Meanwhile, perfectly broadside Miyoko pops up, who's possibly the ship that actually capped the middle. They could have, you know, although you think of destroyers being the primary ship to flip cap. Sometimes if you're in a stealthy enough cruiser, Miyoko's not bad for tier 7, and if there's nothing that can spot you, you might as well go for it. Hell, you can cap in anything, of course, as long as you're unspotted. So I don't know why I felt I had to make that distinction, really. That was a bit of an odd aside, all things considered. What I was going to say is, anyway, this was an occasion when my AP did not disappoint. I actually got some citadels on the Miyoko, even though they were flat broadside, so that's pushed me up to now nearly 100k. I do now also have some high explosive loaded just in case the Shinonome gets spotted, but they're still very firmly in their smoke, so it looks like I might have to use that at something else, although I am holding my fire for the Shinonome just for a little longer, but no, I might as well fire at what's spotted and actually try and do some damage. This, of course, does have the AG option, unlike the tech tree Italian battleships, so yeah, I don't know, enjoy it while you've got it, I suppose. It's one thing they definitely lack, the SAP. With the way especially it's capped against destroyers, it's definitely an area where the the new Italian battleships feel like they struggle a bit more, because you can't knock out modules in the same way with SAP. You can't set fires, obviously, with SAP. So, unlike the danger of Italian cruisers versus the destroyer class as a whole, battleship SAP is just not nearly the same. Now, despite there being a bit of an angle there, sadly I didn't really do enough damage to kill the Miyoko, although I still got a bit more. And with the Hipper going down, that just leaves the North Carolina, the Shinonome, and their carrier. So I think we've won this one at this point. We've got half our team left. We'd have to try pretty hard to throw it, but I might as well charge in here and get the cap regardless. Unfortunately for that final shot, yeah, the North Carolina rammed into that Hipper wreck, which denied me the rear turrets, and although my front turrets are about to reload, with the benefit of Adrenaline Rush, it's the Amagi that actually gets the kill. And they actually do that just at the point where they flood out. So they got a Kraken and then immediately died, but I think that was a rather deserved Kraken considering the beating that they'd taken. I mean, comparatively speaking, I've had a relatively easy time of it up until now, apart from my initial mistake approaching the sea cap. Anyway, I eat a torpedo from the Shinonome, which is a bit unpleasant, but flooding isn't quite the danger it used to be. And I actually hold off on the damage control just until the risk of potentially taking some module damage from that airdropped torp passes, but maybe I should have just let that flooding be in retrospect. Especially with what you're about to see coming up. Although, letting that flood happen and not repairing it, taking all that flooding damage, might, with what you're about to see, have been a bit of an error itself. Maybe that was the correct call, but what you're going to see was definitely an inappropriate use of the damage control, considering the immediate situation I'm in, that is with a destroyer somewhere right in front of me. Now, there are friendly carrier planes coming in to do a bit of spotting. There's also the Ranger doing not a lot of damage, but actually taking out my engine, which is annoying. And there we go, blind shot. You can see the spread there without anything locked onto. So, yeah, that's the full Italian dispersion experience. Because if you are unaware, if you are locked onto an enemy ship, you actually get a... I don't know if it counts as a buff to your accuracy or if it's a debuff when you're not locked on, because they are different things. But yeah, I've got no way of seeing this destroyer at the moment, and I'm about to take another torpedo, which is a bit nasty. I take a flooding, and at this point, here is the extremely unadvisable use of damage control. I wanted to repair my engine to get moving again, so I'm not a dead sitting in the water target for more torpedoes, but at this range I'm eating torpedoes anyway, and now I've got a double flood to deal with. Oh joy! The only real good news is that that smoke has to be going round about now, and the Shinonome should be spotted really any moment. The flooding is also not going to be enough to kill me, but it's going to be a close thing. And you might have seen in the chat, I was actually asking the Mainz to pop a Hydro, because I'm pretty sure the Mainz always has Hydro, right? Or does it have to swap between Hydro and defensive? I honestly can't remember. Might be one of those cruisers where it's a choice between those two. So they might not have had a Hydro, but honestly, especially with the German Hydro, you might as well take it. Defensive is not really worth it on most ships these days. As it turns out though, despite my error, I am still alive just about, and that just leaves this Ranger. I'm actually going to get a bit more damage from them, which is quite nice, although the damage result in this game was already okay. It was pretty damn decent for the Roma / Littorio, given how unpredictable these guns can be. And just to contrast the experience of playing this, you know, this game in which the guns have relatively behaved themselves, the previous game I'd played to this had been in the Roma proper, where I had spent most of the game on something like 30k damage because the guns just trolled me so hard. And then at the end it was saved a bit by farming a carrier, exactly as in this game. It was like a Lexington or something, it was a tier 8 carrier, and I was able to get something like 50k health out of them. So yeah, but it was a far less interesting game just because of how derpy the guns were, and it was just kind of all around a bit frustrating. But this game, almost 2.4k, was a hell of a lot better, and that Kraken Amagi actually in second place there. So yeah, they did do enough to definitely deserve that that Kraken. They weren't just hoovering up the low health ships, as you occasionally see. So all in all, for this ship, that was a pretty decent result. That was an overall nice game, but I think there were definitely a couple of my mistakes in that one that you can possibly take away and try and learn from, because, you know, I should know better, but it's always the case when, even if you're a relatively experienced player, I'm not going to say I'm a good player, but, you know, I've certainly been playing for a while now, that sometimes you still goof and do things that you shouldn't do, and maybe even at the time realise that you shouldn't do. And in that case, you know, with that Shinonome, immediately regretted doing. So yeah, if you can take away anything from that, it's not immediately hammering the damage control party consumable in all circumstances in a battleship is a good thing. You should actually think about when you're using it, because one experiences all too often playing against battleships those people that put out a single fire or extinguish a single flooding and then regret it immensely. And in this case I did, because I was that battleship player, but it wasn't quite enough of a mistake to get me to sink. But even if I had, we still would have won. We had won at that stage, so it wouldn't have affected the outcome in this game at least. So hopefully you enjoyed this replay, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath the video, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.